just going to share some ideas with you about how we got here and what's going on. And this is just a model for creation, and it's not me saying that you need to accept any of it. But it's designed to stimulate thought and some remembrance, because when we know where we came from, it's much easier to work out where we're going to go next, which a lot of you are asking, well, what am I here to really do? Okay, so what I'm going to do today is we're going to talk about a model of soul incarnation, how we come here, what we do, how it all works. And this is pretty much hidden from us when we first arrived here, simply because your soul wanted you to engage with this reality as if it's really real. Okay? So we forget where we come from. Okay? But as I said in the Unified Chakra meditation, you're all sparks of the divine. Ultimately, we're all sparks of one great being. All of this whole universe is just one great being, one soul, who's experiencing itself through us. So ultimately, we are just sparks of the divine, all that is. We are the act of creation, creating. Creation is not something happening out there. It's us living our lives. Okay, so you're all important to that process of creation, because all that is learning in each moment through who you are and whatever decisions you make. So, in the beginning, there was a soul. We call it God. Is everyone okay with the word God in the spiritual sense? I'm not talking about the Christian God. All that is, great spirit. There was one spirit who had reached the point in its evolution where it was time to create a universe. And each of your souls will do that one day. So there's more than one universe. Okay? And so we're here, so we've got to accept that something happened to create all this. In our limited human expression, we may not know exactly what that is, but we are here, we're sentient, we're experiencing something that's going on. And so there's always been creation, but it has to start from some point. And so what happens here is that the soul of this God, if you want to call it that, it sets aside an area in creation, which is in the void. There's nothing there initially. Remember in the Bible it says in the beginning, there was the Word, there was light. This is what they're talking about. All right? So the soul of all that is, God, goes into the space set aside for this universe, and it expands its consciousness, and creation begins. It's a bit hard for our human minds to grasp that this entire universe is just one being, which it is. All right? And so it fills it with its energies. It starts off expanding its consciousness, and its consciousness spreads everywhere. And in the beginning it was just pure light, or pure sound actually. That's where Om comes from. And it differentiates itself into many different parts. Okay? Many different parts. So what it does is that pure source, which is unimaginable for us in our human form to even grasp the concept of, that frequency, that vibration. It drops its frequency gradually, and it densifies. All right? And what it does, actually I'm going to show you a different diagram for that. So I'm going to jump around a little bit here. This is source here. It steps down its frequencies. So just imagine that source is, let's say, the 12th dimension. This is the third dimension. Is everyone familiar with that? The idea this is the third dimension, this is the physical earth plane. Okay, so in the model I'm using here, it's a light body model based on my training. There are 12 dimensions. So source is at the 12th dimension, so it's 9 octaves above where we are now. And it drops its frequency gradually here, down and down and down to all the way into the third dimension where we are. And so this is the out-breath of the Creator. And so what it's doing is it's expanding its consciousness and dropping its frequency so that the many different parts of it can feel separate from Source. And its desire is that those parts, under their own free will, which is us, experience life, creation in each moment. We have free will choice in what we do. Okay? So, this is us in the third dimension. This is the fourth dimension. This is the astral plane. This is where you see in the Hollywood movies people go up the tunnel of light, or their soul goes up the tunnel of light. This is where they're hanging out, up here. Okay. So, on Earth, so let's get it to a scale that we can handle. Basically, there's a differentiation there as well, a hierarchy of soul progression, because creation requires many different parts of it for it to experience itself, knowing itself more. So imagine that we take 100 cells of God consciousness. Okay? So what it does is it differentiates those. So initially on Earth, we had the Earth forming. Earth forms every solar system. Well, the whole point of the universe is for God to experience itself. So every solar system has a certain amount of life. And they're all very similar. We're not the only one here. There's billions of them in the galaxy. A sun is formed. It forms planets. And they're designed to take sentient, incarnate life. That's the whole point of the universe. Even though you've been told that we're brainwashed, that we're the only life form in the whole universe. And you think about it mathematically, it just makes no sense at all. So the whole point of a solar system of the universe is for incarnate sentient life to form, so the sparks of the divine in it can know themselves more as the Creator through their life experience. That's the point of it. So it's actually not a bunch of rocks and molten stuff formed and then maybe life forms at random. It's the other way around. It was created so life could form. That's the point of it. And we are made in the image of the Creator. So about 40% of the life forms in this universe look very similar to us. They're humanoid. So that's just what was chosen. That's in the galactic DNA. It's in the universal DNA, just the way it works, with some variations, obviously. So what happens here on Earth is that, say, the first 10 cells, this is just a model here, they differentiate to what we call real primary, just the most simple life forms, single-cell paramecium, amoeba. We've got to start from somewhere. So they came out of the primordial soup, as we know, because we've been here about 4.7 or 4.6 billion years that the Earth has been in existence. And then we have another 10 cells, or 100 cells, they form plants and insects, etc. And as we go up the scale, once you hit about 80%, you get animal life forms, okay, which have some basic intelligence and capability of learning. And then what happens is that the last 10% are humanoid souls, which is us, beings capable of sentient consciousness. Basically, they're aware of themselves, being aware of themselves. That's what happens here on Earth. And it's not saying these are any better, or we're any better than any other part of creation. It's just that this is just the spark of the divine in us. A decision was made that you'd have this particular experience. Okay? And so, the purpose of this whole experience is to turn every part of yourself, how many of you felt abandoned by God, abandoned by life, that you're a small human being left on Earth and you've got to work it all out by yourself, and it's a pretty tough challenge? Yeah. Because what happens here is that we have a sense that we are separate from the Creator. And it's done very deliberately to see, well, what are we going to do about it? Are we going to go and seek that connection? Which is why we wake up spiritually. And how many of you between about the ages of 35 and 42 or earlier, or maybe a little older, had your midlife crisis or spiritual awakening where you looked at your life and felt there's got to be more to it than this? And you went searching for it, and it got stronger and stronger, that urge? Well, that comes because the soul's saying it's time to go home. It's time to connect to who you truly are. And how many realize that the initial life you formed wasn't the point of it at all? There's got to be, I've got to find the real meaning, and you just really were determined to find it, which is probably why you're here today. Okay? Yeah. Well, this is the wanting to return home. So this is this diagram here. So you get to a point of maximum separation in this third dimension, and everything that can be learned has been learned through the many sparks of the divine incarnate here. So what's happening now is that we're wanting to return home to source. Okay, and this is called the Ascension process. How many of you are familiar with the concept of Ascension? Yeah. It's the same process. Yeah, it's exactly the same process. Yeah. So it's about having the experience of being at maximum separation from source, and then going back and taking all the memory and experience of that back to source. So we take our little part of the Creator creating through us, so the Creator knows itself more. Okay. So how many of you have heard of the Akashic records? Okay. So the Akashic records are the record of the Creator creating it. Creator creating. It's this record of its experience. That's what it's actually about. And that sits in the fifth dimension up here. So you're all important, and you're all busy being the Creator, creating in your everyday lives. That's what you're actually doing, to take this experience back home. And so it's a very slow process. It's a very, very slow process. It takes billions of years each cycle. All right? And so, as humanoid souls, you're all practicing to become a creator. It's actually what you're doing, ultimately. But it's a gradual process, and I know it's hard to imagine that one day, in the way we understand time, you're going to go and create a universe. That's actually what's going to happen. So, how did you get here? How many of you felt you got dropped off on the wrong planet? There's been a bad mistake. Yeah. Well, you didn't. Okay. You didn't. It just feels like that. All right. So, what happens is that you normally sit around in the fifth or fourth dimensions when you're not in a body, because we're just pure consciousness. And so what happens is that you have a very good idea, much more expanded consciousness when you're in that state. And so you choose, well, what's going to be optimal for my next step in growth? Because the idea of incarnate life, and there's actually a cue to come down here, believe it or not, because you learn much faster in a body, even though you wish you hadn't come. There's actually a cue, because when you're in a body, a physical, emotional body, and you have the intensity of earthly emotions, the imprint on your soul is much more intense, and you learn much faster than when you're in the fourth or the fifth dimensions. Okay, so there's probably 10 other beings who wanted to come in, but you got there first. Okay, that's how it works. All right, and so what happens is that you go before the board of karma for whatever planet you're on, and you come to different planets in different parts of the galaxy for different types of lessons. Okay? This is a love universe. This is about learning to get back to love. Hence we have a world the way it is, which doesn't have a lot of it in. So you come to a place where there's a lack of that, so you can learn to create it. That's what happens in life. You always get the opposite of what you're to become. It's the way the universe works. Maybe seem a little perverse, but that's just the way it works. And so what happens is that the board of karma on Earth, well, the governors, if you want to call it that, of this solar system who actually reside on Saturn, you go before them and you make a case, look, I'd like to come and learn here, And then they first assess, well, are you ready? Because you may not be, because you can't come to a planet where the level of consciousness and experience doesn't match with where you are. So you've got to be in range in terms of being qualified to come. And then you make a presentation of, well, this is what I'd like to learn. And they make suggestions, and your guide. How many of you are okay with the concepts of having spirit guides and things like that? Yeah. And your spirit guides will also help you. So, well, we reckon, based on the past 75 lifetimes, this is the next natural progression. And you in the higher dimensions have a much more greater awareness of who you are anyway. You make a game plan. This is basically what I want to do. And then, provided that they think it's okay, because you're the one who has to decide what it is, they say, okay, you can come in. You just can't arrive on a planet randomly. Because if you were the wrong consciousness, wrong frequency, then you would not feel at home at all. It wouldn't work. It would be very difficult. It's challenging enough as it is. Okay? So what you then do is that you go dip into your Akashic records and you decide, okay, what am I going to learn this time? And so you look at all the themes that were there and you pick a selection of those ongoing themes from those past lives and you program them into yourself to do it again, or some variation or some enhancement of that. Okay? And so when you're in the higher dimensions, there is no karma. Okay, karma is not a fixed thing. It's just a program, it's just an experience. So you pick a set of karmic patterns, and then it's only when you come into your body at conception, only then is the karma activated. All right? How many of you believe you've got to slog your way through all your karma and really work hard at it? Okay? You don't actually have to. Okay, you don't actually have to. Because there are ways of accelerating that clearing process, because it's just lessons. And the sooner you bring consciousness to the lessons you face, the sooner they'll dissolve. All right? And you notice people who aren't on the spiritual path, how hard life is because they're not bringing consciousness to their karmic patterns, so it gets harder and harder. That's why some people get very bitter as they get older, because it's worn them out. And you've noticed how spiritual people who do work on this stuff look younger, have more energy, is because the load's not there anymore, because they worked it through. So it's sort of a choice, really. You want to work on it or not. Okay? And the karmic patterns aren't there to punish you. They're just there. It's what we call a negative context. So how many of you are familiar with the law of attraction? Where your feelings and thoughts, mostly subconscious, create your reality? Yeah. Well, the law of opposites goes with the law of attraction. So initially your soul's programmed in certain experiences for you to have, but initially you'll get the opposite of it. So say the soul wants you to learn about you as a spark of the divine, wanting to learn about, directly, viscerally experience coming into your power, it will create a very disempowering experience. How many of you had very disempowering experiences when you were younger? And how many of you turned away from it initially? Found it hard to cope with? Yeah. But how many of you found if you actually worked on coming into your power, then the disempowering experiences started to go away? Because the idea is to turn into the karmic pattern, bring consciousness to it, and transmute it. Then you get the positive aspect, which is what the law of attraction is trying to create for you. But the majority of people turn away from their karmic patterns, therefore life becomes very hard, because it just gets stronger and stronger until you get the message. So what's happening is that you're here to turn into all of the big challenges in life, for transmuting those will then bring you the gifts that you're here to deliver in your service on earth. So it's I know it sounds a bit warped, it just seems to be the way it works. Diane.
My understanding is, with all this, is about we need to understand, we need to leave darkness to understand the light.
Yes.
Because you cannot understand one without the other.
Yes. Yeah, if we didn't have polarity consciousness, we didn't have these points of darkness on earth. I mean, horrendous things happen on earth out of unconsciousness. You look at the wars that we have. It's very violent down here. and the things that people do to each other out of unconsciousness. So, and we say, oh, we rail against it saying it's really horrible, and we focus on that's bad, and that's bad, and that's bad. But because of the law of attraction, you're just creating more of it because you're focusing on what's, quote, bad. It's not bad, it's just unconsciousness. So the idea of it is to say, okay, let's step back. Is that actually what I desire to create? And people, they say, what you resist persists, which is true. Just describes what I'm talking about. So the whole point of this is to say, I wish to go to the light. I wish to focus on the light. I wish to increase my consciousness. And if enough people do that, guess what's going to happen? Because you've taken all the energy away from creating all the darkness. And the media focuses you on all the bad things. None of it's true anyway. Ultimately, it's just designed to keep us in fear so that we create more fear and we stay unconscious. Fear's at a very low frequency. So if you focus on what you do desire in your heart that you've learned from your life experience, and if every light worker does that, because about 2% of the population are people like us, more conscious beings who came to Earth, not to participate fully in the game of what we call separation from spirit, but to bring our higher consciousness in here, to transform it. So it's important that we work through the karmic patterns that we've specifically chosen, claim our gifts through that transmutation process, then deliver those gifts to the world. Because if enough of us do that, the world changes. You don't need everyone to change, just a critical percentage. It's actually the square root of 1% of the world's population needs to shift to a certain degree of consciousness, and everyone shifts. Because that's only about 8,500 people. It's not many out of 7 billion. So your individual journey of awakening through this progression of the soul, which we're talking about today, is critical. Because you might be just the critical person that tips the balance, and we shift to another level of consciousness. Because as I said, we're all one great soul, and every species on Earth is connected to a morphogenic grid. How many of you are familiar with that? This is Rupert Sheldrake. So basically, at the interface between space and the atmosphere is the Christ consciousness grid. And in that grid is contained a grid for every species on Earth. Without that grid, that species can't exist, and every human is connected to that grid. So enough of us, that 1% shifts in consciousness enough, it goes into the grid and affects every other human being. All right? So the best way to shift what happens down here is to change your own consciousness and help others do the same, raise them. Because if everyone does that enough, everyone else wakes up.
What was that called again? Sorry,
it's a morphogenetic grid. Yeah, they discovered this in the 50s or 60s in the Kuril Islands in Japan, where they had the monkeys there on all these thousands of separate islands. One set of monkeys discovered if they took wild potatoes and washed them in the water, it was much easier than eating the dirt. And then the anthropologist observing them then observed suddenly all the monkeys on all the islands were doing it, and there was no physical way for them to communicate. And that's how they figured out is a morphogenetic grid, because it happened immediately. See, so therefore there must be something connecting. This is purely from a scientific viewpoint. So we're all connected. Okay. So karma is just a negative context for you to transmute and to bring your gift into the world. That's all it's for. So it's about engaging with that as the highest priority to transform that. Because if we turn away from it, as you might have noticed, it comes back to bite you a bit harder every time. Okay. So if you transmute your karma, you're gradually increasing your frequency, you're raising it, and a bit more of you is becoming more unconditionally loving. And the idea of incarnate life is to turn every cell in your soul to pure unconditional love. Because then you can start to move up towards back to source. That's the whole point of it. And when you're 100, it's actually very hard to be unconditionally loving. I find it hard. Yeah. I find it hard. because we're in a human body and we're loaded with so much programming. But that's the idea. I mean, I think the Tibetans have a process of creating the rainbow body. We've got to have, I think, 13 years or something, where you've got to be purely unconditionally loving of everyone. And then you make a huge shift in consciousness. Very difficult for Westerners, I'd say. Very challenging. I don't know if I could do it. But that's what they do to create that very experience. And they can shift in consciousness enormously and ascend. So, I'll show you a way to do it though, some tools. Yeah. So, this is actually who we are. The part of you that's permanent is the higher self here. This is the Vedic model. And you have what's called the God self, or the Atmic body, the Buddhic body, which is your higher emotional body, and you have the non-linear mind. And this is a vast state of consciousness. This is the consciousness on the fifth dimension. Now, this is why Mozart at 7 could download whole symphonies, because Mozart, the physical being, wasn't doing it. It was his higher self. He'd say, okay, ready to go, download. It all comes out in completeness. See? And so, this is us down here, the personality, the impermanent personality that was created here. Okay? And so you have, this is where you have a mental body, which we all use too much, an emotional body, 7 subtle energy bodies, and a physical body to hold it all together. And this is connected through what we call the antakarana. It's the connection from the higher self to you in this reality, from the high dimension. This is what keeps you alive. This is where your life force comes from. You need more than oxygen and food and water. Without that connection, you're dead, because the life force is not flowing. Okay? And within us are all these emotional separation patterns. This is your karma and all the other goodies we have. This is your ego programs, all the things that sabotage your life. Right? They're all your beliefs and judgments, everything that creates us as being human. And so all the stuff here is what holds you in this reality. Okay? So, the key to actually ascending, the key to actually getting on with this life, is to clear all this, the mental, emotional, and energy bodies in the physical body, of all the good programming that your soul's put in place. Layer by layer. How many of you do self-healing on yourself, or go and see a healer and work on your emotional issues? Or at least do Reiki on yourself, or whatever tools you've got. Yeah. That's really important, because that's actually how you're gradually clearing the issues which are blocking you turning to a greater percentage of unconditional love. And as you do that, the antakarana, it opens. And then this higher consciousness comes in, the pink here, and it brings an unconditional love. Alright? And then life gets easier. How many of you found that now you've been working on yourself, life's a lot easier than, say, when you're in your 20s? Yes. And you like the body of a 20-year-old, but you don't want to be the emotional 20-year-old. That'd be torture, wouldn't it? Or a teenager, even worse. Okay? So, this is the process of becoming more conscious, becoming more unconditionally loving. Let's go back to the previous one. So you keep working on yourself, doing healing work, and the antakarana gets wider and wider, your consciousness opens up, you just have a knowing of things. How many of you just follow your intuition, what feels right, and just life opens? And if you find you think about it too much, it doesn't work so well, because the left brain went off and it figured it out, but it didn't actually. It gets it wrong about 50% of the time. So it's not very reliable. It doesn't work. Have you noticed how the intuitive heart-based process always works? Okay? Because you're following this. It's your higher self communicating through you, and your soul communicating through you through the bodily sensation. That's actually the most accurate way of working out, well, what do I do next? And if you did the inner chakra, which I demonstrated at the beginning, you're connecting to the vast consciousness of who you are. And if you practice that regularly, what happens is that you're in it more and more of the time, so you're in a completely different state of being. And if you allow that higher consciousness to guide you, life will open and flow in ways you cannot imagine. I used to try and figure out life when I first started this, and it was really not a great experience because half the things never worked. So now I just go with the flow. What shall we do now? Okay. And then it opens. So, you know how Christ spent 12 years in the desert? This is what he was doing. He was traveling around all over the world, cleaning out his personality because he had to come into a body which was loaded with karma. You can't come into one without it, even if you're God incarnate, and that's what he did. So he could spend the last 3 or 4 years of his life being like this, which is complete dissolution of the ego, full embodiment of the higher self. It's called enlightenment. That's actually what he was doing. Okay? That's what he was doing. And so when you have this amount of consciousness come in, that comes into the reality and it affects everything around you. That's why he could manifest things out of thin air, literally, because there was no barrier in him. And you could all do that too. I mean, he says in the Bible, you can do this. That's what he was talking about. So your job is to clean yourself up, your ego up as much as possible, because when you can embody the higher consciousness, it will embody and flow out on you. See, you're like a projector there, and the lens is really dirty when you start in life. And it's setting out a distorted image here. But your reality that you're experiencing is actually the higher self, which is, in this case, my computer, sending information coming onto the screen. So if your lens is really clear and the light coming through is very powerful enough, you'll create a different reality. This is like a 3-dimensional projection screen, the whole reality. How many of you have seen the movie The Matrix? The Matrix? Okay. The Matrix is about the closest they've got to showing you what I've just talked about, how the reality actually works. It's a program reality, and it's coming through each and every one of us. So if you have a lot of karma running, if you haven't cleared your issues, it's not going to be particularly pleasant. But if you clear what's happening, then you have high consciousness coming through, you create a completely different reality here. Okay? Yesterday, there were 4 of you coming. So I did a manifestation meditation. So I'd like a few more people because it's more fun with more people. And I did this. I just connected to higher consciousness. I put it out there, need more people. Okay? And I had a vision of 10 in the room, and there are actually 10 of you in the room, including you guys. That was my manifestation. I wanted at least 10 because I wanted a good group energy. And so I used this process of allowing higher consciousness to come through, and I connected to the oneness of everything, which is actually who we are, and here you are. I just did it once. See? And so you're actually... How many of you feel that you're a victim of the matrix, you're a victim of the reality, stuff is done to you? Or used to feel like that when you were younger? Yeah. So, and that's what they tell you. That's what the matrix is programmed to tell you. I mean, they spend $3 billion a day to program you with fear that you're a small, limited human being. Think about that. $3 billion a day. And people are worried about 350 million going to the EU a week. Think about that, what $3 billion a day could do to the world. Okay? So, but the truth is, you're actually a divine spark, and if you get clear enough in your physical vehicle, you can affect the matrix, you can change the reality, just like I brought you all here today. Most people don't believe that, but that's actually that's the biggest secret actually. If we all focused on bringing the divine through us and creating a better world, better lives, it would happen. A huge amount of times money is spent to stop us from even getting near that concept, but that's actually one of the biggest secrets. So, in getting clear enough, you can create access and create whatever your purpose is, to answer some of the main question of what this workshop's about. And what happens is that your purpose is never revealed to you like some great biblical slab at 20 when you start on the journey. Here it is, big slab, just like Moses had. You're here to do this. It doesn't happen like that. It comes as you get clearer, it comes layer by layer. You get one piece, and you follow the breadcrumbs. then the next piece. Have you noticed how that happens in life? You get one thing and another one. So it's only when you're ready do you get the next piece. Maybe this is another piece for you today. And then you progress with that knowledge, and then you find the next piece, and things grow and expand. Have you noticed how life never turns out to what you thought it would be 10 years ago or 20 years ago? It's because Spirit has a different plan to your mind altogether. Completely different plan.
Just aware that sometimes a lot of us can think back to when we were younger and have this vision of when I'm grown up in the future.
Yeah.
And if you kind of went as far as to make a little list, I know I did this in my early 20s, it was a list. And then sort of 10 or 20 years later, you kind of find the notebook, look back, and you think, yeah, actually I've got everything on the list, but nowhere like the way I thought it would be.
Didn't think it would be like that.
I think you have actually totally manifested and created what you wanted, but
not quite,
how you imagined.
not what you thought would happen, no. Yeah. So it's important to sort of follow the flow in each moment and open. Be present with where your heart wants to take you. Because that's actually how you get to purpose. And the mind is very fixed on goals. I mean, this is built as a very fear-based matrix. And the concept of money was introduced thousands of years ago to get us to focus on something which takes us away from focusing on love. Okay, and it was introduced as a control mechanism which completely distorts what's going on. So it's important to move away from that programmed concept which affects us all very greatly and drives the whole way everything's built down here, to what's in your heart. Where does the love of your soul want to take you? Because that's the true wealth, that's the true gift. And if you follow that, the universe supports you. Things happen, things turn up. And things turn up out of thin air. How many of you have things turn out of thin air when you're in the flow? It's because it's coming from higher consciousness. So real abundance and flow doesn't come from this reality, because if this is a projection into the third dimensional screen, okay, nothing's going to come from this because it's not real. But if you're open here, all sorts of good things can happen. I, through me, drew 10 of you because I wanted to have a bit of fun today. And hopefully you'll get some fun out of this as well. Okay? Right. So, let's have a look here. So what do we do about all this karmic stuff? All right, so here's what you do. Oops, I'll move back. The first thing you need to do is that, how many of you, when you first started on the journey, spent a lot of time trying to understand your karma, understand the lessons? I did. I went to counselling, I went to psychotherapy, all sorts of stuff. But how many of you noticed it didn't actually change much? You just understood it a little bit. You might have got a bit of peace because you understood it, but it didn't actually change a lot. Okay? It's because our Western Cartesian left brains think if we understand it, that's plenty. Okay? But actually, what your soul really wants you to do with your karmic patterns is to identify the issue, but bring your willingness and desire and courage to feel the issue. Okay, that's the key. This is the key to growing. If you could feel every one of your karmic patterns 100%, it would dissolve because you just brought consciousness to it. And your ego spends all of its energy, which is why it's a bit tiring down here, because it's stealing all your life force, trying to stop you from accessing all those programs, because it's programmed to keep you separate from God consciousness. It's the nature of being human.
Why is that? How is the ego, what was the point of?
So you could experience maximum separation in feeling consciousness from all that is, so then you'd have the desire to get home, because when everyone gets to a pain threshold in life where you've had enough, and you'll do whatever it takes to get rid of it. Okay, so then you'll get home to spirit, to the oneness, that pure love. I mean, the unified chakra is trying to connect you to unity consciousness. It's trying to connect you to that all the time. Okay? And so that's why we have an ego, so we have that sense of separation. Because in being separate, see, if you are back in the divine state of pure God consciousness, there's nothing you do, you just sit there. I'm pretty happy. It's nice here. you wouldn't need to do anything, would you? There's no propelling force. But if you feel separate from all that is, there's a pretty strong feeling because this is very uncomfortable or extremely painful. I want to go home. I know this is, how many of you feel this is not really home? It's like something's badly wrong with this place and I shouldn't be here. Yeah, it's because it's not your natural state. You see, this is the reason. And that's a drive. You turn up here. You're seeking the answers. Wanting to go home. I spent a lot of time seeking the answers because it felt really off. Something was badly wrong. And someone hasn't told me something. And I better find out what that is. See?
Search for the truth.
Well, yeah, searching for the truth. For those of you who watch The Matrix, the splinter in your mind, they talk about Neo knows something's badly wrong with the reality, and he's right. As you know, something's not right about this. It's a very dissonant, separate reality. So, the key is to bring feeling consciousness to the issue, but what happens is that most of us are numbed out with this turquoise emotional ice that stops us feeling what's going on. And that comes from just the trauma of life in general. Just the shock and trauma, and we numb out, or we're very sensitive, can't handle it. And we learn to control our emotions because our frontal cortex is very strong, the way especially in the West. So we can't feel the issue, so therefore we get stuck. We know something's bugging us, but we can't get to it. Okay?
At least we think we can't.
We think we can't because the ego's going to tell you, you can't sort any of this out, don't even bother. It's going to tell you that. Or it'll come up with what we call the death wish. It'll say, if you do this, you're going to die. It says that as well. But actually, if you have the feeling of wanting to die, how many of you had the feeling you want to die when you're in a crisis? You'd rather not be here? It's called the ego death wish. That's the time when you're really close to breaking through the program because it's the ego's last defense. Okay, but actually what it's scared of is its own death, the death of a layer of its own consciousness. So if you're doing some healing work or pursuing a path and you have the death wish, keep going. Because you'll notice that will dissolve, feel the fear and do it anyway, that's what they're talking about. That layer, you'll notice the death wish is gone and you're still there, feeling freer and lighter. Wonder why.
Yeah, I would.
You just claimed another layer of yourself back, you see. Okay? So the ego is a real trickster. So most of what your mind feeds you is garbage. All right? So, but what you feel in your heart is the truth of what's going on. The chances of you getting a decision right just purely in your mind are 50% if you're lucky. Not good odds. You might as well flip a coin in life. But if you feel in your heart what's right, then it will flow a lot better because that is going to work. I've got to lock up. Well, just imagine that ball. Oh, here it is. Let's come back. So the key to actually breaking through to the issue is that you've got to break through with the right tools to break through that ice here and get into the feeling. You've got to find a way. That's why we have healing work. I mean, we offer divine healing at the Centre for Conscious Ascension, but there's EFT, all sorts of other things, self-healing tools. They're all designed to break through the ice so you can get into the red stuff and feel the issue. And then the ego can't stop you then. And to clear that layer. And as your system gets used to clearing those layers, it's easy to do the next one and the next one. If you notice how the healing process accelerates the more you do, because there's less ego resistance, because you've just dismantled the whole thing. Okay? Any questions so far?
I just wondered, because you're talking about feeling being very relevant. I'm an intuitive empath, so I tend to feel mine and everybody else's. How do that play into this model that very often some people feel for everyone? Now, I can't hear for everyone, even if I'm with someone that's suffering and I feel it for them, I can offer, but I can't do it for them. Can you?
Well, I guess being your job really is to help people. See, most people can't feel what's going on, so as an intuitive empath, you're here to really help them bring consciousness to what's going on. Because if someone goes, you're right, that's true. They've just gone and done this. because you just named it. When the ego's been really fighting hard to stop them feeling their pain of abandonment or whatever it was. So that's the power of being an empath. But it's not your job to go and process it, which is probably the hazard for you, and it's probably quite exhausting maybe when you're younger, because part of you may have felt out of the love of your soul that I have to go and heal this for them. But if you do it for them and they don't feel it, they don't get the learning. So there's not much point.
It's just sharing the knowledge.
Yeah, that's powerful enough as it is. Because acknowledging what the program is here is 50% of the way to healing it. Because you just named it. And the ego goes, oh, she figured that out. Shouldn't have figured that one out. I wasn't hanging on to that one. That was a good program. See? Okay? So if you can bring consciousness to the pattern, and you can 100% feel it, which is usually not possible, but you use the right healing tools, you can clear it. That's how you clear the karma. Because karma can be cleared in an instant if you could totally feel a pattern. And also, so there's two ways of clearing karma. You can bring consciousness to it, use the right healing modality that's appropriate for you, okay, clear it that way, or you take an action in the opposite direction. Because if you take an action in the opposite direction of what the ego is trying to get you to do, say for example you're feeling disempowered, and you stood up to a boss at work, and you claim your power back, you clear a huge layer of disempowerment karma. Because the action is the opposite of what the direction your ego was taking you. So there's two ways of doing it. In fact, doing them in parallel is very powerful, because if you once you realize what the ego is doing, and you consciously heal the issues as they come up layer by layer, take actions in the opposite direction, it starts to fall apart. It's a bit like a jumper. You start pulling all the threads out. You pull out enough, it's just going to fall apart. And that's actually what you need to do with your ego. And it's not about making it the enemy. It's just the nature of being human. It's just accepting it. It's like a 3-year-old having a fit most of the time, and you're trying to gently dismantle it. Yeah.
I think the thing is to get the ego to work for the higher self, because that's how we can create our heaven on earth.
Say that again?
If we get the ego to work with the higher self, for the higher self, that's how you can create heaven on earth.
Well, the key here is about creating enough clarity in the ego where its worst sabotages and all its low frequency programs which are holding you back are cleaned up enough so you get as much of this higher consciousness and love coming through. And then what happens then is that when the ego dissolves or is partially dissolved, your higher consciousness comes through you and you become the walking, talking, feeling expression of the soul. So it has a feeling or desire. You've had the feeling of desire and synchronization. So then you're flowing with what we call the spiritual signature, the opening of the heart. And that's when life opens and flows. So that's where the ego has surrendered. And you need to reach a point of what we call soul integration, where enough of the ego is cleared so you can do that. Okay? And that's when life gets easier, because that means that the dominance of the soul is overcome the power of the ego just through sheer consciousness. So you're sitting on the astral plane, back up here. You're sitting here on the astral plane, a little ball of light, ball of consciousness. If you're in this reality, you weigh about 4 ounces actually, the soul. They actually measured it when people die. The actual body loses about an average 4 ounces of weight, which is the soul leaving. Okay? This is you, pure consciousness. And you're looking down on the earth plane thinking, okay, I really want to come here. Not that you think that now. How am I going to design this incarnation? What are we going to do? Okay? Who are we going to play with? All right? Okay? And so the soul chooses a time zone, a country, a genetic structure, all its key relationships. Okay? And then it chooses a name, which through the law of attraction is going to create every moment of your life. So it designs all this before it comes. And this is part of its proposal to the karmic board. What's going to happen? And so it's trying to design a life which will stretch it but not overdo it, even though some of us may feel it's been overdone, for a given lifetime. So it sets in place your soul contract. So the way this works is that the way you design a life is that you take a set of vibrations which were represented, in this case the way we look at it with the soul contract work, by ancient Hebrew. How many of you are familiar with it? Most of you are. Or who's not familiar with the soul contract work? Yeah. Okay. So the soul contract work is based on the idea that sound is creative, and that, like the sound of Om, created the universe. And what happens is that if you match your birth certificate name, which your soul chose, and it imprinted on your parents what it wanted to be called. It's usually 2 or 3 names. How many of you got kids? Yeah. And how many of you have maybe only 2 or 3 names you could have for your children? It's because your soul of the child's telling you, it's telepathing to you, especially as mothers, what it wants to be called.
What the name should be.
Yep. Yeah. And so it's hoping that you'll get it right. Okay. And so the idea.
People complain about their names and no, their own name.
Well, some people change their names, don't
They do? Yeah. So basically the soul of the child has already chosen the name. Like you chose the name, your name, and you told your parents what you'd like to be called. And most of the time they get it right.
And you choose your parents?
Of course. Wish you hadn't, sometimes. Chosen them once you had, but you chose them as well. You chose parents because you wanted the genetic structure, you wanted the experience you'd get from the way they live their lives. And you know all this before you come.
Yeah.
There are no accidents, even though sometimes it's not particularly pleasant, but that's part of the karmic pattern. Okay?
So is it right that sometimes you're in a community of people and you, throughout your different lives, you might still be with that community, but have a different role?
Yes, yes, yeah, called soul groups. You tend to come down in soul groups and play out many different roles over many different lifetimes. Families tend to do that, or villages do it. So that's why some people seem really familiar, even though you've just met them. It's like, oh, here we go again. That's why, because you can feel it. You just know this person feels very familiar. Yeah.
So if you're a mother and you're waiting to become pregnant, and you wait, it takes a little time. Is that the soul not deciding to come, or is it because that soul has to work something out before it comes, or perhaps it doesn't really want to come, or why is that?
It's because it wants the right astrological configuration. Because you choose that as well.
So it's waiting for the right moment.
Yes, right.
To incarnate.
You're right. It's waiting for the right location and time for conception, because that will set the natal chart will set everything in place and going. That's why that happens. Okay.
So what happens if you have an induced birth?
Yes. Yeah.
And so the baby's born at the wrong astrological time?
Well, actually, that's the right astrological time, because there might have been a certain point of conception which sets energy moving as well in a specific way on Earth, because you're in the Earth plane in the matrix. Then the baby goes, oh, got to be 5 days early to get the right astrological natal chart. So stuff happens like that. And
so beside ourselves, everything happens, doesn't it? Really, we don't arrange anything.
At a higher level, you arranged everything, but as a human level,
in spite of us,
you're here to witness and experience and engage as much as you can. Yeah. Yeah.
So you're just a vessel, really.
Well, we are witnessing the divine coming through us.
A channel.
You're an embodied spark of the divine, witnessing, viscerally experiencing this life. But it's all been divinely designed by you at a higher level.
Yes.
It's not done to you. You designed it all. You're just catching up with now in this body with what you designed.
But we don't have any influence over other people, so that's all determined by something, by them or some higher being.
Well, we actually arrange specific people to be in our lives at specific times. Have you noticed if you get rid of one husband or boyfriend, but you hadn't worked on the issue, same thing turns up 6 months later till you get it? Once you work,
it's preordained.
Yeah, and once you get it, someone else turns up.
Yeah.
Because you arranged all that as well.
Yes. Yeah.
But just it's not like it's a clockwork thing. It's like it's all potential, and you have 100% free will, or your ego has 100% free will to decide, what am I going to do now? Will I get the lesson on the third or fourth husband, or am I just going to have more pain and keep going to the fifth and sixth? I've seen people do this.
Until I get it.
Until
I get it.
Till you get it.
Yes.
That's why the plank gets bigger all the time till you get it. Then you notice the plank goes away because you got it. You going to say something else, Deanne?
Sorry?
You had another question?
No, I just wanted to say that basically it's about consciousness wanting to know itself through matter.
Yeah.
For me, for what I'm understanding so far this morning, everything comes down to perception. Because it's one thing how we perceive things, and it's something else how things really are. So depending on our perception, we can make our lives easier or harder.
Yep. If you follow the path of the mind, life gets harder.
Yeah.
If you follow the path of the heart, life gets easier. It's a simple choice in the end.
It's about what we believe as well to be true or untrue.
As I said, 50% of what you perceive or believe about things, or the decisions your mind makes, is untrue.
Yes.
Cannot rely on this at all.
So the less we do, actually, the better. The less we
less you think about it,
yes.
the more you follow and feel about it, the better your life will be.
Yeah.
Okay, so women have a much better chance of living a more smoother life. You notice how much men suffer when they're in their left brain? Because they're thinking about the wrong thing and doing the wrong thing.
Do you think we incarnate first as men and then as women as we get more perception or higher up in our...
Sort of a loaded gender question, isn't it? Loaded gender question.
You too could be a woman involved.
Yeah, I have an aspiration,
There's no gender, it's about balance between the two.
Yeah. Generally, the souls will prefer one or the other. There'll be slightly more time spent in one gender or the other. Okay, but at a soul level, we're androgynous. It just depends on what you want to experience. Okay, so I don't know if there's a promotion to being a woman.
Can you come down into any time period? So life doesn't kind of keep on moving on, or if you chose a life to come back as a Roman because that's what you wanted to experience, or not? Or do you think your soul moves on with the time of the universe?
We have linear time because that's what we in this reality can handle, is past, present and future. But actually, this is the part our minds in this reality can't handle. It's all happening simultaneously. So you could have a timeline. We'll draw over here. You can handle it. So you have a timeline.
Because time is written, you can't really fix time.
Actually, I've got a better diagram here. I'll use one of these. It's simpler. So actually, there is no time.
We've created time.
Time is just a perceptual thing.
We're the source of time.
Yeah. So if this is you now, 21st century, 2016, our perception is that's the past, that's the future. Okay, so say this was a different lifetime, okay, with a different personality expression. So you as personality expressions created by the soul contract, which I'll explain a bit more in a minute, are brand new every lifetime. I, Nicholas David Mann, have never been here before at a personality level. My soul has a lot, and it's the same for you. So you have it's the same soul here, moving through, quote, time, here, but you have different personality expressions. Okay? So actually what's happening is all these lives are happening simultaneously. It's hard to get our head around sometimes.
That's difficult.
That's hard because we need a sense of time for progression.
Yes.
But actually at a universal level there is no time.
No.
It's all happening at once. It's a matter of where you put your attention. So if you wanted to be back in Roman times, you can, because that's still happening
Yeah.
somewhere.
So when people sort of have their past lives, it's probably part of them now.
Well, it's actually, they're accessing a very strong, visceral, cellular thing which is already happening. It's a question of where you put your attention, because everything is happening simultaneously, all at once. But it's hard to grasp, but that's actually what... Well, we seem to be. So, we seem to be, okay? But that's why you can actually access what's happening from a future life, and it comes back and flows and benefits you in this life, or adversely affects you, because it's happening right now, in the way we perceive time. Think about that. But that's actually what's going on. So actually you have no past lives, you have no future lives, you just have lives, all happening at once. Just that your attention happens to be in Cheltenham today at 11:53 on the 4th of June 2016 on Earth. But your higher self may be incarnate on thousands of other planets, having completely different experiences, but you may have access to some of them, because it's bleeding through it goes from the soul up to the higher self. It can come down to wherever you are actually physically incarnate. So it's a bit of a mind-blowing concept, but that's actually what's going on. Because remember, it's just one great soul experiencing itself in a myriad of different ways, and all those different ways that have the illusion that there is time. Because there's got to be a sense of perception. Okay? And just because you feel you're more experienced because you're older, all that means is that you're just focusing on the bit of you which is not a 3-year-old, which another part of you is. See? So once you get to that stage, sort of the mind gives up and can't handle that.
But how do you feel a real connection with somebody from the past, some historical? In the past as we know time.
It's probably because some people misinterpret that as thinking I was that person. No.
What is the connection then?
But it could just be you in the presence of that person's fields, and it's in your cellular memory.
Right.
That's why you feel strong resonance with some of these things. Because the human ego always wants to feel important. Because it feels much less than God, because I'm in this little body, I'm away from God, oh God, I feel like a victim, stuff's happening, I want to be important, oh I must have been Cleopatra because I had a past life, recall of that. I'm important, I feel better about myself. That's just the way the human ego works.
But it is really that you're just touching their soul in some way, aren't
You were probably associated, you're probably in that lifetime, maybe somewhere in that area of the world, and you've had a resonance of the field of that individual. Because those sort of individuals have very powerful souls, which affects everyone around them, which is why they can do what they do.
And then a time too, would you say, if you have an affinity with the Roman times?
You may have spent a lot of time there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like for example, in Roman times, a lot of souls experience being in military lifetimes.
Yeah.
Many, many lifetimes. And others may be just of pure service. And there'll be certain themes the soul follows, and you'll try it in lots of different time zones. That's actually what happens, which is why you may feel affinities to certain things, because you were there.
Certain age, yes.
Yeah, or you actually are still there.
Yeah.
You're still there with it. Okay. So, the way we design our incarnate life is that we design a name which will create every experience we have, and we program that name into our DNA, into a substance called karmic matrix, which is like a grey cobweb substance. It's the 4th, 5th and 6th dimensional levels of your being. And it's programmed into you, into your energy fields, and it's literally radiating out to the matrix, to the reality, and the matrix is rearranging around it. The matrix is very fluid. It's like a 3-dimensional projection screen. So if you put out a certain light, certain consciousness out there, it will show you a certain reality. So you can be in the same room as someone and be having a completely different experience because the matrix is rearranging around that. So you're not all experiencing the same thing. It doesn't work that way. And it's not real ultimately. It just seems real because it sort of seems to be moving, the clock's ticking, we're going through the day. And I've had some clients say to me, Nicholas, I need to tell you something. Because no one else will believe me. He said, at one moment, the entire reality froze. and everyone was still, and I was walking around. That's when I knew it wasn't real. And then you see that in the Matrix and those movies. They're trying to show you something, but it's not real. And then it started again. Then I was never the same. And I can't tell anyone else because I think I'm crazy. But when I have 2 or 3 people tell me that, I know it's real, independently. Because they've got to get it off their chest. And I think I'm going nuts when this happened. See, and other people said it's just disappeared completely. One woman said to me, it disappeared completely. I was sitting in the stars. Then I realised it was entirely, nothing was real. Then it all started reappearing again around me. And then I was back on Earth. One woman told me that because she was really stressed by it. But so her higher self was trying to show her it's definitely not real. See, and you forever change when you have those sort of really strong experiences when you're in a body. So what happens is that the way we're built, the way we design incarnate life, is that we use the Star of David, and we have a large downward pointing triangle which represents the physical side of life. So your soul has to create a brand new personality expression, as I was saying, and you have to form your interface with the world. You have to mold it and get used to interacting with the world. And so you spend the first 5 cycles of 7 years in the physical side of life, predominantly. So you're learning to walk and talk, get conditioned responses, have core relationships, jobs, career. In between the ages of 35 and 42, this is where the 7-year itch comes from, you get a transition. This is where you have the midlife crisis, spiritual awakening. It can happen earlier or later. And where the soul says, okay, you've got firmed up enough now at a personality level, let's get on with the mission. And so the spiritual triangle forms here, or activates more. And that's where you begin the search, as we talked about earlier this morning, for the real purpose for life, because you're trying to work out what's in that triangle. All right? And the soul's hoping that you have enough grounding work so that the spiritual mission can build on the physical foundation. So this is why it's really important to work through your initial karmic patterns so that you've got a good grounded foundation for the real mission to happen, the purpose, which is what this workshop's about. And in each of these triangles, these 3 aspects, we have karma, talents, and goals. And karma, as I said, is a set of unresolved issues from past lives to create the negative context of everything you don't like, so you find out what you're meant to do here on earth. And so those become your gifts. Your greatest gift is in the biggest challenge you face. It's not somewhere over there, it's actually in you. It's what's in your face all the time that you don't like.
Say that again.
Your greatest gift lies in the biggest challenges you face in life. Okay? What's your biggest challenge when you were younger?
In terms of what?
What were the biggest karmic challenges? What were the biggest
things that I didn't like?
Yeah.
Most.
Yeah. Okay. So your biggest challenge is to reconnect to God consciousness.
Yeah.
Okay. Mother and father represent the archetypes of mother, father, God. So the way we relate to our parents is how our ego wishes to separate from mother, father, God. It's all about abandonment ultimately, because we come into a body, we feel separate from God. And our parents represent those 2 archetypes. And if we don't work it out with our parents, we'll work it out with a partner. He may be one or both parents all rolled into one. So the idea is to burn through that and reconnect in consciousness to God consciousness. But it's within us that we're meant to do that, to overcome that sense of separation. And that's how you get home. Okay? So it may be to reconnect to higher consciousness in a very specific way. And so the way we overcome the karma is we bring the latent physical talents, in this case, actually have to make a pen here. Isn't the pen gone? Yeah, it's gone on. I'll talk about it. It's gone on twirly things running. So the idea is that the physical talents are latent, and you bring them up into consciousness, and they help you overcome your physical karmic pattern, if it's a good match. And as they get stronger, they then allow you to move from the physical talents to get to the physical goals, which is the underlying drive you have in life, why you're really here. Okay? Yeah. back to that. Okay, let's draw a pen. So this is physical talents overcoming the physical karma. As it gets stronger, it helps you overcome the physical goals. And the energy flows from karma to talents to goals in your energy field. So these patterns are sitting in your fields and in your body. And they are basically consist of what I call the karmic matrix. And you're basically burning through the stuff through the process of life. If you notice how some things go on for a while in life, months, days, years, and suddenly it starts to change, then life shifts to somewhere else, because your soul basically decided, okay, I've learned enough of this, next, and it switches on something else in you, and something else happens. So that's in the physical part of the chart. And then the spiritual karmic pattern is one of the main gifts you're here to deliver in life. And so, in facing, for example, mine is disempowerment in the spiritual karmic part of the chart. And my life mission is to overcome that and transmute it, so I can claim my power back, then empower others. So whatever your gift is, whatever your karmic pattern was, you're here to deliver to others in some form, whatever's right for you in life. And so it's really important in terms of your soul's purpose to actually overcome especially the spiritual karma, because that's actually your real purpose, it's your gift to deliver to the world. And you bring the latent spiritual talents to overcome that. And as they get stronger, that gets you to the spiritual goals. So if you can get all those running, then life gets really satisfying, because you feel a deep sense of satisfaction, because the soul's getting what it came for. But once it sets you in motion with the soul contract, it cannot interfere with what you're doing. It's got to sit back and just hang in there for the ride, because you have free will, ego free will, physical, emotional, ego free will to do whatever you like. You can choose not to engage with it, which I don't think any of you would, because you know what that leads to, just more suffering. Okay? Or you can choose to engage and gradually surrender to the flow of spirit. And as you do that, life opens. Okay? And so if you actually work consciously in all these 6 aspects in the contract, okay, what happens then is you achieve your soul destiny or life purpose. And it gradually, as I said earlier, unfolds and reveals itself as you clear all the 6 outer aspects. That's why things aren't revealed straight away, because your ego will come in, if you had the big slab of stone early on, and think, oh, I'm not worthy of that, and I'm not going to do any of it. So the mission's just been wasted. So you're only given enough that you can handle. Otherwise the soul wouldn't get what it needs. So if you notice how life stretches you just enough, or maybe a real stretch, but you think, I'll probably make it, I'll have a go, and then you get established, you consolidate, then the next step comes. Previously you think, I couldn't have done that at all, it wouldn't have happened. I mean, I used to be a struggling alternative therapist for many years, barely making a living. Then I wrote my book, Your Soul Contract Decoded. Then life changed totally, because my karma, and physical karma, was to share the wisdom of my soul. So I shared, how many years? 23 years of working in private practice, of working with lots of different people, of how they work through their issues in that book. That's what it's based on, real life. So I shared that wisdom I'd gathered, and the wisdom of my soul in the universe, came back and said, okay, lots of interesting opportunities to, like I go to teach in America now and do TV and radio and have a lot of fun, which I could never have done before. So that when you share your gifts, just as an example, the universe turns up and things open in all sorts of amazing ways, because once you hit the jackpot of grasping what the karma was and you transform it, and life opens. And it can be like a different sort of life. How many of you had that experience when you made a major breakthrough? Things really changed? And you wonder, God, that took so long, but suddenly it's here, can't believe it, and then you just want to go for it. This is how actually life works. So you've got to hit a threshold of clearing enough of the karma, then new things open. So it's important when you understand what those patterns are to persist, because you never quite know when you're going to make the breakthrough. It could be tomorrow, it could be a week down the road, it could be a couple of years, but you don't know. And the soul's not going to show you because it wants you to keep going. You see? So I told you it's 5 years down the road, you're thinking, oh, I don't know if I want to do that. I don't know if I want to do that.
So those people in life are searching, looking for their thing.
Yeah.
They're kind of trying to jump to the goals bit. What's my goal? What's my point? What's my purpose? The way to discover that and discover the purpose is to step right back through talent and what you're good at, emotionally or physically, but getting right back to what really is your purpose.
Yeah, that's the key. That's the gateway.
Because everyone ignores that bit.
That's the best one.
It's over natural talent because it looks too easy. That can't be my thing. I have to work for it. And then what's you have to go to goals and points and end results
and they can't get there because they haven't done the important bit at the beginning, which is
the one bit they're avoiding because it's big.
Well, yeah.
And not comfortable.
Yeah, not comfortable, not happy, yuck. Yeah.
So when we take our clients and make them cry and then just literally have them and it's brilliant because the amount of times you have people in front of you that want to be cheered up and go away weeping because
but they haven't dealt with it though.
And then they go away and yay, you're going to
So it's the hard stuff that matters.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. So we're gonna have lunch in a minute. So the key is to work through the karma and all the other layers of the chart. And this is just one divination tool. It's a very powerful one. Astrology, human design give you all different pieces of what you're facing in life. But in addressing the challenges and transmuting them, that's actually how you eventually get to your purpose. Okay? And it is revealed layer by layer. And this is like the spiritual map of life. This is the map of how to actually get there. Because most people will use a sat-nav. I use a sat-nav to get here. But most people would try and come to a place called Cheltenham from London without a map. They do it in the dark, lights off in the car, and try and get there. So you think what that's going to do. But that's a good analogy for most people's lives who aren't on the path. Even people on the spiritual path. You might have one light on or two. But you actually don't have the navigation map of how to really get there. So you wouldn't do that, would you, if you're in the car? You wouldn't go to a strange place without a sat-nav, or at least a navigator with a map. But that's how most people live life. And they wonder why it's so tough. Because they're going in the wrong direction. They're going to Scotland or somewhere, or some other place. Nothing wrong with Scotland, but they're going to the wrong place. You see? Let's have lunch.